Hello everybody, this is Lori Anderson, contributor for freedomoutpost.com, and I have a Christmas surprise for everybody. I do hope that you're having a Merry Christmas, and we are working in sync with quite a lot of individuals who are exposing the different things that are going on here within the United States of America. What we are going to be exposing today is the blatant propaganda that is being sent out to law enforcement across the nation. Why is this so important? This type of propaganda, when it is given to law enforcement, they don't realize it's propaganda. Then they see law-abiding American citizens, we the people, the same people who, if there was a ISIS terrorist attack or just a scenario where a storm hits and crud hits the fan, we would be the same people helping these law enforcement officers. But because of documents like what I'm getting ready to share with you, because of those kind of documents and the police officers having no reason to doubt what they're given, it makes the officers think that we the people are indeed their enemy, and we're not. I'm going to prove this step by step through this document. And the reason this is so disturbing, of course, as you can see, it comes out of Homeland Security. And there's massive problems with that, because this shows that they have no regard for the citizens, but that also shows they have no respect and no regard for our police departments and our police across the nation. We the people are not anti-government. We are the government. We're not trying to overthrow any government, and nor was anybody at the Bundy Ranch. Yet they portray that as such. By the time I'm done, and we will dissect this document, you will see who the real aggressors were. You'll see who the real individuals that were violent were. And you will see that you as law enforcement have been targeted with propaganda from the Department of Homeland Security in order for the perfect divide and conquer. Because what easier is it than to have the police think that we are against them? To have the police target us because they feel threatened, all because of documents like this. It is not only ridiculous, it is sickening. But we will get into this document. So the document that I am going over is the intelligence assessment. It is unclassified, FOUO. Domestic violent extremists pose increased threat to government officials and law enforcement. It was dated July 22nd of 2014, as you can see. This does state it's law enforcement sensitive, which makes me wonder why. Because if this was true, then hey, It would be easily public knowledge, right? Well, there's a good reason why they said they didn't want the media to get a hold of this. Because many people in mainstream media played along with Harry Reid's little touting of quote-unquote domestic terrorists. But there are many that did not. And there's many that stood up, including Judge Napolitano. And this has to be brought out. Why does this have to be brought out? This has to be brought out and be made aware because our law enforcement are being targeted with propaganda in order to create the ultimate divide and conquer situation. This type of propaganda right here is trying to make law enforcement believe that people, the protesters, the Bundys, the militia, are violent extremists. I'm going to prove all of this different. All of this lies. Stuff you didn't see on mainstream media, we're going to bring out here. Because it is not okay to propagandize not only the American people, but it is not okay to propagandize our constitutional law enforcement, our law enforcement that are true blue law enforcement that really are there to do their job to serve and protect. You are being propagandized. It's not right, and we will speak out for you as well. But you're being tricked, and you're being tricked into targeting very good, honest American citizens. Many of the individuals who were at the Bundy Ranch, they were ex-law enforcement or Navy SEALs or veterans. You had legislators out there. And the only ones that did anything violent in that case was BLM. And we'll go into that. But first I'm going to go through this and show you that they absolutely did not want this to be distributed to the media. Warning, this document contains unclassified for official use only. Information may be exempt from public release under the Freedom of Information Act. It is to be controlled, stored, handled, transmitted, distributed, and disposed of in accordance with DHS policy relating to FOUO information and is not to be released to the public, the media, or other personnel who do not have a valid need to know without prior approval of an authorized DHS official. Well, how nice. The individuals who are involved with what happened in Nevada that caused the problem are the ones wanting to keep this secret, and they're the ones that they're going off this information. And what's sad is many law enforcement officers are overworked and they don't have time to research the truth. So they just automatically assume that these kind of documents are truth. Well, of course they would assume that. I mean, you would assume that Homeland Security would tell you the truth, right? Not so much. Okay, so as you can see, this is an intelligence assessment. The scope of it: after years of only sporadic violence from violent domestic extremists motivated by anti-government ideologies. Don't you love how they say that? INA has seen a spike within the past year in violence committed by militia extremists and lone offenders who hold violent anti-government beliefs. These groups and individuals recognize government authority but facilitate or engage in acts of violence due to their perception that the United States government is tyrannical and oppressive, coupled to their belief that the government needs to be violently resisted or overthrown. Historically, spikes in violence have followed high-profile confrontations involving the United States government, such as Ruby Ridge and Waco. The April 2014 Bunkerville, Nevada standoff likely represents a similar event that could inspire further violence. Well, let's talk about Ruby Ridge and Waco. Because in Ruby Ridge, the only ones that did the shooting were the feds. They shot an unarmed woman holding an infant in the head. They shot a dog, and if I'm not mistaken, a boy that was approximately 14 years old in the back. If you really want to learn some things about how the lovely federal government acts, yeah, that's a little tyrannical and oppressive. You need to learn about Ruby Ridge. All of this is very important to understand why people drove from across the nation to protect a family. It wasn't about protecting land. It was about protecting the lives of innocent citizens that were not harming anybody. And you will see that for yourself. This assessment examines the common themes and targets of these attacks and assesses the potential for increased violence that may follow the Bunkerville standoff. Okay, I'm not going to go over everything in this document, obviously. I am going to leave a link where you can get a hold of this document. I ask that you do please download. I do ask that you reshare. Get the message out there. Our police need to know they're being propagandized. It's been legal for the government to propagandize all of our people, including law enforcement, since 2012, since the Smith-Month Act was repealed in the NDAA of 2012. Okay, key judgments. INA assesses that the perceived victory by militia extremists in a show of force against the Department of Interior's Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, in Nevada in April will likely inspire additional anti-government violence over the next year. Okay, so let's dissect that. First of all, the militia extremists. If they were extremists, if they were violent in any form, fashion, or manner, shots would have been fired. There were no shots fired at Bundy Ranch. No shots were fired. No one died. And no militia attacked anybody. However, there was a show of force, but it didn't start out that way. Do you know how it started? There were protesters, and those protesters were being attacked by BLM, and the protesters were unarmed, by the way. Unarmed. An elderly lady that had cancer. A BLM agent ran up behind her, not even to her face, behind her, grabbed her, and body slammed her. One of the BLM agents tried to sick a dog on a pregnant woman. All of these people unarmed. The only thing they were armed with was a camera. Another 2 or 3 agents pulled out tasers and shot 3 tasers into Eamon Bundy. Once again, unarmed. The only ones that were pointing weapons, the only ones that were highly armed at that point in time when all this started was the BLM. And they came in with their rifles. They came in with their trucks, their bulldozers, They came in with their helicopters. They were armed to the teeth. If I'm not mistaken, there was approximately 107 BLM dressed up paramilitary. They were the aggressors. And why is this so important to me? I want law enforcement to know you're being lied to. And it's all a tactic for divide and conquer so that you will be worried about we the people instead of the ones who are actually doing all of this. Perfect divide and conquer tactic, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to go to a video and I'm going to show you how it's really started. And there's going to be many different videos that I use for reference points, which I will also put in the links below so that you can have access to those videos.
Could I speak to a supervisor? I have an important concern. I'm not bullshit. Could I speak to a supervisor? Sir? Could I speak with a supervisor?
I want you to see something, so I'm going to back this up a little bit. Pay close attention right here. There's going to be a lady in a blue shirt. Now I'm going to get different footage to show you clearer where he bulldozes her. Right there. See her on the ground? Right there. That's the elderly lady they body slammed to the ground. Do you see anybody armed yet? No, you don't. And you don't because they weren't armed at that time and the militia was not there.
Get back now!
Okay. So the elderly lady gets body slammed. You have the protesters, of course, get upset because you have an unarmed elderly cancer lady getting body slammed by a BLM agent from behind. And as you can see at that point, there is nobody that is armed. There is no militia there. So just in the way that they make this report sound is, oh, it started off the militia was there and they were the ones who were violent extremists. And law enforcement is buying it hook, line, and sinker across the nation, targeting those individuals because of this information in which these are the same individuals that would stand up for our law enforcement's protection if need be. These BLM agents over here come in, and as you can see, what is the first thing they're doing? Nobody's armed except BLM. They're pulling tasers and dogs. Now let's watch. This lady right here is a pregnant lady. You have one. You've got two tasers out. This right over here is aiming Bundy. Remember, they just slammed his aunt onto the ground. And right before we go here, watch this man over here with this dog. Watch him take his knee and kick his dog forward to try to get his dog to attack this lady. You'll see it in a minute. Okay, so we have tasers, guns, everything else out. What do you see here? Cameras. These aren't armed people. Dogs. Is this Nazi Germany? And then And then they want to put a report out to make it seem as if, oh, the poor, innocent BLM, well, they were just scared to death for their life. They were armed to the teeth as an army. They were armed as if they were an army. The posse comitatus makes it illegal. And BLM is land management, not law enforcement. But they come in, and it's aside from whether you agree or disagree with Clive and Bundy. The fact of the matter is, they came in, they were the aggressors. At this point in time of the Bundy Ranch protest, because that's what it was at the time. This wasn't a standoff, it was a protest. They wanted to know, what are they doing with this big rig? Because they're supposed to take the cattle out. That's not something you take cattle out. That means they're killing cows, which they did do, which is against Nevada law. And it was not in their court order. So let's watch.
Watch him kick that dog toward her.
Do you see right there? Did you just see him kick that dog towards her to try to get that dog to go after her?
Back up!
Get everything recorded. Just stand back. Come here. Stand with me. You stand with me. Stand with me. It's the best thing you can do right here.
They thrown down my aunt, dude.
Listen to me. Listen to me. You stay right with me. You stay right with me.
They threw down my aunt. They
Listen to
my
me.
cousin 3 times.
Listen to me. You stay right with me, okay? Huh?
We got on video.
What are they armed with? Because according to this report, they were nut job militia. The only ones armed in that situation and that are nut jobs are the BLM that started this. And after Ruby Ridge and after Waco, in which they went in over allegedly guns too, which was such a crock, 76 men, women, and children were slaughtered by our government, by the ATF. There was congressional hearings over it. It's all too fresh in our minds. Good, honest veterans, law enforcement, legislators stood up across this nation. We saw what was happening with the way they were arming themselves and the MRAPs and all of it. They were getting ready to annihilate this family. You don't go in after cattle like that unless you have a plan to annihilate them. So I will show you the rest of this part. This is off of Pete Santilli covered this part.
Who's the aggressor here? Who's the aggressor?
Listen, let it go. Let it go.
Am
let
I
it go.
carrying an AR?
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Seriously. Don't give them the satisfaction of taking you away. All right? Stay with me. Okay? Listen to me. Listen to me. They're looking bad right now, okay? That's all. Seriously.
It's my family.
Don't give them the satisfaction. I know that. I know
It's
that.
my family.
I know that.
Guys!
Listen to me. Dude, listen. Come on. Come here, bro. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Don't give them the satisfaction. I know this is what it takes to go. I know you got a lot of emotion. I would do what you do it, okay?
I've had family members fighting for this freedom.
I know how they act there. They want nothing.
I've had uncles die for this
They
freedom.
want
This
nothing
is
more than to
it.
take
This
it.
is America.
That's
dude.
fucked up!
Listen to me,
This is
come
America.
here. Listen to me. You get on the record. I want you to talk to me right now.
Yeah.
Back up, okay?
Yeah.
I want you to tell the American public what you just saw, dude, all right? I want you to tell them. What did you just say?
Enemy aggressors. This is the road I grew up on. This is the road I grew up on. 1359 Riverside Road, Highway 170, Nevada. And I just saw federal agents throw my aunt on the ground. I saw my cousin get tased 3 times. I saw him pull dogs and sick it on a pregnant woman. Right now, just now, it's happening as we speak.
Listen.
Because we had a couple questions. I got hit by multiple vehicles because I wanted a couple questions. They hit me with their mirrors. I got hit with that dump truck. This is America, and they are the aggressors. We're not the aggressors.
You know what, kid? Hey, can we stop? Sir, can we stop those vehicles right there? No, I'll back up. Hey, you know what? No. Your court order does not allow. Where is it? We're killing of cattle.
No BLM! No BLM! No BLM! No BLM! No BLM! No BLM! You guys don't know what you're stirring up.
What are you doing with the backhoes? That's all we want to know. What are you doing with the backhoes? That's all we want to know, dude.
Who's got the ARs? Who's got the body armor? I left my pocket knife at home. Who's got the guns?
Comply with the order. Yes, sir. Comply with the order. Come here. Come with me. Comply with their orders. You understand? That's where you get in trouble. Come with me. Come here.
I don't want it.
Huh? No, I know, but you have to. You don't give them the satisfaction. You gotta come back.
I know,
okay?
but they gotta see my face.
You want to take me? Go ahead! Get out of here! You are one fucking pussy! We don't need that! Get out of here! Quit taking her shit! I want to know quit taking her chicken shit road! Go before us! Go that way! Yeah, we know they should try that! Yeah, you chicken shits, you hide around and take different roads!
We'll see you in federal court, buddy.
You drive your little truck past the sign! You need to leave now! We're done. Hey, get
You're not done, dude. You're not done. Hey,
Get out of here! You're far away!
you're done when we say you're done.
Here, you losers! Big American hero! You guys need to get back.
We don't mean any harm, bro. We don't mean any harm. Oh, I will stay back. I don't mean any harm. I'm just recording your brutality.
Sir, for your own safety, would you move
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
My baby calves! They're under the bushes dying because you took their mama. They're terrorists.
Get in the truck! Get the hell out! Hey! Hey! Hey!
Who threw the woman?
He won't deal with you throwing a woman on the ground. No, it was Margaret. It was Margaret that he threw on the ground, the one that had cancer. She's cancer ripped. She's a mess. She's been fighting cancer.
Where is she?
Get out of here!
That was the
Get out of our state! Get out of here!
right here, Margaret, on the shirt.
Pull back. That's right, baby. That's right. BLM, go away. BLM, go away. BLM, go away. BLM, go away. That's how we know. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Now, do you notice no one at this point is armed? No one. But did you see what they did to this lady right here? To the pregnant woman, to Eamon Bundy? And there's a lot more that wasn't shown on this video.
That one had Oregon plates on that son of a bitch.
Where's Margaret?
Margaret, get over here and tell them what they did. Look at her. Look at her feet. Look at her hand. I have 11 children. I'm 57 years old, and they threw me to the dirt.
Why did they throw you?
All I was saying, I'm taking pictures. I'm getting in front of their vehicle and taking pictures.
Right.
I just said, get out of here. Get out of here.
You did.
That's all I was doing.
And they said, you said,
They didn't
get out of the way? They
said,
didn't?
get out. No, they didn't say anything. I was just her down.
Are you okay?
No, I hurt. I mean, they scraped my knee.
Do you want me to call a medic? Let's get this documented,
No, look
okay?
at this. And here.
Do you remember who did it to you?
No, I didn't see because
Okay.
it was like, I was like
Listen to
this. Okay. And
Listen.
they just tackled me and threw
I'm going to
pushed me.
contact 911. You're going to get this documented, okay?
Okay. They pushed me.
She has cancer.
Based on what you just told me, you have cancer, man?
I've been
Hold that microphone.
free for 2 years on cancer. I just quit my treatment
And listen to her throat. She had it in her throat, and they're throwing her down, choking her. Hey, how are you?
Hello, 911?
I was.
Hi, 911. We have a medical situation required.
Okay, so obviously you can see at this point in time when the Bundy Ranch standoff began, this was not a standoff, it was a protest. And it was a protest because they had permission to remove the cattle, but they did not have permission to kill the cattle. They were bringing in backhoes and dump trucks. They only wanted the questions answered as to why those dump trucks and the backhoes were going in, because they had the gut feeling that they were going to be killing cattle, and that was not part of the court order. They're not allowed to do that, even according to Nevada law. That's a felony in Nevada. So let's go back to the document itself, now that you've seen the beginning. And I really hope that there's some police and some law enforcement officers out there and some sheriffs out there that see this information. I want you to understand and see just how much they twist this in this document to propagandize you, to make you fear the people that are peaceful, that would have your back. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm not going to even go into the sovereign citizen deal. You can look that up because that just goes into entirely too much, and I'm trying to go over this document in detail with the proof about the Bundy Ranch. DHS defines militia extremist as groups or individuals who facilitate or engage in acts of violence directed at federal, state, or local government officials or infrastructure in response to their belief that the government deliberately is stripping Americans of their freedoms and is attempting to establish a totalitarian regime. These individuals consequently oppose many federal and state authorities, laws, and regulations, particularly those related to firearms ownership, and often belong to armed paramilitary groups. They often conduct paramilitary training designed to violently resist perceived government oppression or to violently overthrow the United States government. So let me ask you a question. If BLM agents are over there with loaded down with tons of rifles and pistols and MRAPs and helicopters flying around and approximately 107 vehicles with tons of military guys dressed up paramilitary, who are the extremists? These individuals weren't even armed. As a matter of fact, the reason the militia and the protesters from across the nation came was because of this. It wasn't because of the land dispute. It wasn't because of the cattle, although that is an important issue in this. The real reason we came, or they came, I wasn't there personally, but I did watch live, was because of the abuse of the unarmed American citizens, women, elderly, children, men, all unarmed. But, you know, they're allowed to get by with that. Does anybody remember how many deaths were caused just in Waco? 76 men, women, and children, ranging from infants on up, were killed. America's not allowed, not willing to let that happen anymore. That doesn't make you an extremist. That makes you pro-humanity. That means we care about your life. Not makes us anti-government, or as it says up here, the militia extremists. So the DHS defines a lone offender extremist as an individual motivated by one or more extremist ideologies who are operating alone, supports or engages in acts of violence in furtherance of that ideology. And I want you to pay close attention to what I'm reading, because this is funny. In a minute you'll see. Or ideologies that may involve influence from larger terrorist organization or a foreign actor. Lone offenders may act within the context of recognized domestic extremist ideologies. Oh, you know, like that constitutional thing. They hate that. Lone offenders may act within the context of recognized domestic extremist ideology, their own interpretation of those ideologies, or personal beliefs. The mere advocacy of political or social positions, political activism, use of strong rhetoric, or generalized philosophic embrace of violent tactics may not constitute extremism and may be constitutionally protected. Well, look at there. So, when this whole thing started, there was a protest. The protest was constitutionally protected in the first place. BLM already had it in their mind they were going to kill these cattle, which was not part of the court order in the first place. If they didn't think they were going to kill the cattle, they would not have brought in the backhoes and so many people with the weaponry for the wranglers. Which, by the way, is kind of ironic. While people were used to saying that it's because that $650,000 owed, they spent millions to send the ranchers in. So apparently they're not so worried about that money. Because what it is they're worried about that land. Because the resources on that land are really important to Mr. Harry Reid. It's sad. It is really sad what they put out there, and law enforcement reads it and they either don't know or they don't question. How can you not question with the history? We were not willing, the people were not willing to allow the Bundys to be dead, and then, well, you know, maybe some of them survived. Then the federal government, what? Well, instead of apologizing, they'll just pay out a certain amount of money later on, a couple of years down the road, and oh, that's supposed to make it okay. No, I'm sure they'd rather have their lives. As would all of us, and we're tired of law enforcement thinking we are their enemy, because we are not. We stand for what is right. We are not anti-government because we the people are the government. Or do you not remember that we the people, in order to form a more perfect union? So over here in this propaganda piece, they bring up the two nut jobs that shot two police officers in Las Vegas. Those insane, sick, and disgusting individuals, and I say that for a reason, because what they did was not only sick and disgusting, it was cowardly. Militia don't work that way. These people were mental, and they were kicked out of the ranch because they were not all here. So they want to try to tie that with the Bundys? The Bundys kicked them off the ranch. And they kicked them off the ranch because they had clear signs of being not all there in the head. But, you know, they want to try to say, INA also assesses that recent murders of 2 Las Vegas police officers is the latest and most severe incident in a growing trend of anti-government violence compared to previous 4 years and inspired by perceived government overreach and oppression. Do you think there's any overreach and oppression? You don't even have to answer that publicly. I don't think there's much or anybody that could say that there is not government overreach or oppression right now. Even our law enforcement know that. Whether you say it out loud or not, you know it. You've been targeted yourself by the Black Lives Matter movement. Which apparently is linked right to Soros. It's all for divide and conquer, people. They want law enforcement to fear us, so law enforcement will target us. They want us to fear law enforcement, so we'll target law enforcement. I'm nobody's enemy. I only work in self-defense and self-defense only. And if these police officers would stop buying into stuff like this and actually digging into it, your mouth would drop. Your mouth would drop, and you would realize you're being propagandized so that you can be a puppet. Perceived victory at Bunkerville likely to prompt more violence. Can you tell me who was violent there? Because once that happened, militia and protesters came from across the nation to go to the Bundy Ranch to protect the Bundys. You had innocent men, women, and children who were protesting unarmed, and they were being looked at through a sniper rifle. Sniper rifles were trained on the protesters by BLM. There were snipers. There was law enforcement, or I should say BLM, in helicopters, hiding behind their doors and their MRAPs and their trucks while they're aiming loaded rifles and itching to pull the trigger. And the only thing that stopped them from pulling that trigger was we the people showed up. But were they violent militia extremists? Here's a reality check. If they were violent and they were militia extremists, people would have died. They didn't. Not one shot was fired. Thank God not one shot was fired. And you know why it wasn't? Because the militia was there and armed. The BLM was very willing and very ready to annihilate this family. And it was clear to everybody across the nation. And that is why the people went and supported Bundy. And you think that the people that went there are the bad guys? How do you justify that? Even Judge Napolitano spoke out about, the whole reason this happened was because they're heavy hand of the government. And we remember Waco. I remember. Not again. And I ask you, police officers and law enforcement and constitutional sheriffs, don't Don't let them propagandize you and make you fear we the people, because we are not your enemy. The militia is not your enemy. They can quote 7 since 2010. Over 1,000 people were shot and killed by police officers in 2014. Do you want us to think that you are our enemy? 1,000 people died at the hands of the police department. And in this, they want to quote 7 incidents, in which one of them, the Bunkerville incident, no shots were fired and nobody was hurt, with the exception of the ones who were attacked by the BLM agents. Please wake up. Please realize you're being used as well. You're being lied to by those who you thought you could trust. And if you can't clearly see this, we're all doomed. Okay, so it says INA assesses the belief that among the militia extremists that their threats and show of force against the BLM during the April Bunkerville standoff was a defining victory over government oppression and is galvanizing some individuals, particularly militia extremists. What makes them extreme? Because they won't allow the BLM to shoot innocent citizens that are unarmed? Or to slaughter their private livestock? And violent lone offenders, to actively confront law enforcement officials, increasing the likelihood of violence. Additionally, this perceived success will likely embolden other militia extremists and like-minded lone offenders to attempt to replicate these confrontational tactics and force future armed standoffs with law enforcement and government officials during 2014. Wow. Okay, so while they try to redefine what a militia is, and then they keep on saying militia extremist, militia extremist, militia extremist, the only ones extreme are the ones doing violent things. The militia that were there, we're saying prayers, we're waiting on people, and we're making sure the people were not sniped by the Bureau of Land Management. It's that simple. They weren't the ones that were violent, but they were willing to protect lives if the BLM killed an innocent, unarmed citizen. So thank God they didn't go that route. There was a lot of prayer. And even in their own document, they have to admit that what they're doing, even though they're trying to redefine it, oops, it may be constitutionally protected. Well, you're darn right it's constitutionally protected. Because first of all, BLM is an unconstitutional agency. Show me anywhere in the Constitution that allows it, and don't spout me the 14th Amendment. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and you don't have the authority, BLM. On top of that, let's do this. Let's pop over here to 4 U.S. Code 72 real quick. What does it say? Public offices at the seat of government. Isn't BLM at the seat of government? Oh, yes, it is. All offices attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia, and not elsewhere except as otherwise expressly provided by law. Guess what the law is? The law is Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says you are to stay within that 10-mile square. Unless it is for forts, erections, armories, and stuff like that. And guess what? It has nothing to do with land management and trying to steal state property for Harry Reid's little resource grab. So, let's go back to the document. Okay, so here we go again. The Las Vegas shooters for President Bunkerville standoff. No, they did show up there, but they were kicked out of there. Okay, so now that we've got that part clear, look at how they're using this as a report. According to local law enforcement and open source reporting. Okay, open source reporting means it could be any media outlet. Some of them, which they quote, is CNN, and CNN was never there. So they're quoting news reports that are never there. They're quoting local law enforcement, and local law enforcement was working hand in hand with BLM and not doing their job, and is known for being very closely tied with Harry Reid, who is the one who wanted to get a hold of the land in the first place for the resources. Okay, so then in the next one, they say an identified U.S. person who allegedly was part of the armed confrontation against the federal law enforcement officials in Bunkerville stated in May 2014 that militia extremists in Texas will exterminate federal officers who attempt a land grab in North Texas, according to open source reporting by a news source whose reliability cannot yet be judged. So why is it in the report? It's alleged by a U.S. person, allegedly. And then they say that, oh, it's open source reporting by a news source, and the reliability can't even be judged about it yet. So why would you put it in the report if you can't, and you're not sure it's reliable? You are sending this out to law enforcement. Is that what you call proof? Wow. Okay, so after the end of BLM operations at Bunkerville, a Missouri-based U.S. militia extremist group in late April discussed details of possible attacks against U.S. federal convoys and helicopters they believed would be used to assist law enforcement raid at the Bunkerville Ranch, according to law enforcement reporting. I don't know how much I believe that because I've already read all the other stuff. I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no. I'm unaware of that incident at this time. I'm discussing the Bunkerville. So here we go with Bunkerville. Numerous individuals from across the United States traveled to Nevada to support a rancher resisting BLM officers' enforcement efforts. Now, resisting is much different than being violently and extremists. The BLM was attempting to enforce a April 5th court order to impound a rancher's cattle located on federal land following the rancher's refusal to pay grazing fees. Okay, he refused to pay it to BLM because he walked away from the contract with BLM a long time ago because they quit managing the land. He had the money and he wanted to pay it to the state because the state is really who should be getting the money for that. So he didn't have a contract with BLM. He's the last rancher there. Well, they got ticked off. So some of the participants threatened violence against BLM officials and pointed firearms at law enforcement officers. Hold on. Some of the participants threatened violence against BLM officials and pointed firearms at law enforcement officers. The only time law enforcement officers, and those are BLM, was because they had sniper rifles on unarmed American men, women, and children. They also threatened over the megaphone to shoot people. So make no mistake, the aggressors was the BLM. And for sure, The ones who aimed their weapons at law enforcement, that's called self-defense, people. Really, it's self-defense. And if you notice, they pointed them at him, but there wasn't a shot fired. Thank God. There wasn't a shot fired. But they want to call them threatening and violent. But it wasn't violent for the BLM to be aiming the weapons at the unarmed citizens, which caused people to protect the lives of the Bundys in the first place. Which one's the violent extremists? Okay, so according to law enforcement and media reporting, BLM operation ended on April the 12th, inspiring some militia extremists to declare victory. We declared victory because no shots were fired. We declared victory because nobody got hurt and died, except for cattle, of course, that BLM slaughtered, and destruction of private property, all which are felonies in Nevada, by the way. And none of them held accountable for what they did. None of them. We gave victory to God for what happened because it was right. And it wasn't anything to do with a victory because somebody aimed a gun. Look in the mirror, BLM. Look in the mirror. Claiming the standoff was a successful example of mass mobilization that influenced government action and should be repeated elsewhere. You're darn right. It should be repeated everywhere where BLM goes in, guns blazing, attacking unarmed citizens, destroying private property, bringing in backhoes to kill animals and livestock, hits people with vehicles, tases them for no reason, all unarmed, by the way, body slamming cancer patients and trying to sick dogs on pregnant women. It should happen every time that the BLM does that. You're right. Now, if they had gone in there and handled it in a different manner, nobody would have probably been over there except a couple of people protesting. So BLM can thank themselves. Mr. Love, who is a known, pretty much hired killer. Yeah, he's a real piece of work. Mr. Love. I don't see how you look yourself in the mirror. And please don't misunderstand me. I love our military guys and women, but I don't love traitors. And I'm sorry, Mr. Love, but if the shoe fits, wear it. You will one day meet your maker. And that is not a threat. We all will. But make no mistake, whether here on earth or whether when you meet your maker, you will answer for all of your crimes. We all will. Alright, so now here comes the fear. Government and law enforcement are primary targets. Here we go. So as you saw, these people, and I'm going to share another video with you first so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. They twist this to make it seem like the individuals that were at the Bundy Ranch, you know, they're just going out of their way just to target you. That is such a crock. The ones who were targeted were the people. The militia stepped in to make sure they didn't get murdered. It's that simple. We would do the same for a law enforcement officer. I just don't understand how you try to twist these things. And the sad thing is many people believe it because the mainstream media just won't tell the truth. They just go and dish out whatever they're fed. Okay, so I'm going to go to this other video real quick. Judge Andrew Napolitano on it. Please pay close attention to what he says.
Why Judge Napolitano says this administration's appetite for intimidation against the American people is something like we've never seen.
Government just keep taking more and more federal government. Today, that's for the free men of America.
Developing tonight, Fox News obtaining new video of the mess left behind after the standoff between federal agents and protesters at the Bundy Cattle Ranch in Nevada. William Lajeunesse is just back from the ranch. William?
Well, the root of the dispute, of course, is the desert tortoise. A federal court gave the BLM authority to seize and impound Bundy's cattle to protect the tortoise. But the order did not say the agency could, as this video shows, destroy his water tanks, water lines, and fences. Bundy also blames the BLM for allegedly killing 2 prize bulls.
If you notice, I'm inside this pen where that bull was shot. And if you look along the inside of this pen, there's nothing where this pen has been bent. If you look on the ground, the post is still in the same spot. It hasn't even moved. It's not like the bull was smashing this pen and trying to attack the people or anything. The pen is sitting here, it hasn't moved. No damage whatsoever. Where was the danger in that bull?
BLM wranglers allegedly shot the bulls because they were dangerous and could gore their horses. Bundy's friends say that the white bull was shot 5 times.
Nowhere in the court order that I saw does it say that they can destroy infrastructure, destroy corrals, tanks, desert environment, shoot cattle.
Now, the BLM said this afternoon these are federal lands and they don't need permission to destroy illegal fences, water lines, etc., to restore the land to its natural state. But remember, Bundy doesn't even recognize federal authority. And the government says he owes some $640 million in damages, and if he failed to pay, they would sell his cattle. Only we discovered a big problem. No one in Nevada would touch Bundy's cattle for fear of being blacklisted.
The sale yards are very nervous about taking these, what has in the past been basically stolen cattle from the federal government.
Documents show BLM paid a Utah wrangler $966,000, almost $1 million, to collect Bundy's cattle, and reportedly $300,000 for a Utah auctioneer to sell them. What they didn't plan for is a letter from the governor of Utah saying that Bundy's cattle could not be shipped or sold in Utah. So, Megan, on Saturday, the BLM is stuck with cattle that it could not sell, despite already spending millions of dollars in an operation that didn't work. This is not over. The BLM says it will try to resolve the dispute administratively and judicially, though Bundy does not recognize their rights and remains in violation, as you know, of multiple court orders. Back to you.
William, thank you. Well, new reaction tonight to the Bundy Ranch showdown, as critics suggest the federal response in Nevada was a case of overkill. And they say this is part of a larger pattern.
They can throw an army of men around there, literally, with sniper rifles, on guys just like you are, on people just like you are. Someday, they're going to throw that army of men around you.
Today is the greatest day in my lifetime. I've lived 65 years. Government just keep taking more and more federal government. Today, that's for the free men of America right there, for them soldiers that died and fought for it.
This right here is the best thing I've seen, the people taking their country back.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is Fox News' senior judicial analyst, and with me now, taking the country back. And we've heard so much about how the Bundys did not have the law on their side. They were trying to stand up for a principle. But more and more in the days after this, Judge, people are talking about how it got that far. And if you look deep into this ranching dispute, what the ranchers will tell you is this was the straw that broke the camel's back, that they feel this has been a culture of intimidation. And in fact, there was a piece in the Washington Times just today that used that term, culture of intimidation, seen in this standoff. My question to you is that valid?
Well, the criticism is valid. It is a culture of intimidation. It's the federal government using grossly excessive force in order to resolve a dispute that you and I as lawyers know, and people watching us now should understand, can be resolved by filing some pieces of paper in a courthouse. Instead of filing some pieces of paper in a courthouse called a lien, the government says that it owes him money, and a court order validated that. You file the lien on the property. And when he passes away, the government gets to collect. When he sells the property, the government gets to collect. One of those events must eventually happen, and the government can certainly exist until the money passes to it. Instead, they are showing up with an army pointing MS-16s not only at Mr. Bundy and his family members, but at his friends, at people there to protest, to exercise the First Amendment rights, at Fox News and at other news entities there trying to take pictures of them. That's what made this so hair-trigger-like, is the gross, unacceptable, unlawful accumulation of firepower there in order to enforce a judicial decree.
It's not the first time we've seen this. I mean, Fox News covered the raid on the Gibson guitar facilities in Tennessee, where we had agents armed with semi-automatic weapons, bulletproof vests, storming in over a piece of illegal wood that Gibson was using in its guitars. They were criticized for their behavior on a family-owned mining operation in Alaska, for heavily armed federal agents raiding that. We've seen some heavy-handed tactics, in fact, in terms of these raids, and then we've seen it, at a more broad level in terms of the IRS, the DOJ going after reporters, the NSA spying on us. I mean, it's big government run amok in the eyes of many.
It is the federal government thinking it is immune from the laws of the land, the laws of civility that govern the rest of us, even basic constitutional principles. There's a vast disconnect, not only between the federal government and people like Mr. Bundy. Remember, the government is the servant, not the master. That's in the Constitution on the Declaration of Independence. That's not a political statement. That's a value judgment in the American system. But the federal government believes, look, it is boasting about the fact that it has destroyed his property. The government is subject to the laws like everyone else. They destroy his property, they have to pay for it. But yet they think they can be a law unto themselves. That's why this particular case is now ground zero, Megan, for the average American who expects the government to be the servant, and the federal government that thinks it can push the average American around.
But let me step back a notch, because he did not have the law on his side, Cliven Bundy.
That's right.
He had lost twice in a court of law, and what binds us together if not the rule of law? So where did the feds go wrong, having the law on their side?
That's a great question. The feds blew this. They had a court order from the federal judge who issued a decree against Bundy. The Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that order. If the federal government had done this right, none of this would have happened. But they used such excessive force, such unlawful behavior, so much destruction of his property, that now the tide has turned against them. Public opinion is clearly against them. They had to back down because their behavior was indefensible at the scene. They were saying you can't even protest unless you go 3 miles away from here and stand inside a piece of tape.
Right.
So when the government loses control of the situation because of its own heavy-handedness, it's going to cause whatever court will look at this again, and it's going to go back to court to look at it very differently, and the government now has the losing hand.
Judge, good to see you.
Good to see you, Megan.
So as you can clearly see, even Judge Andrew Napolitano now has said about the unconstitutional way they were acting, about them putting the military out there. You can say it's not military if you want to. It's military when they're armed like the military and they come against unarmed citizens. I don't care who you are. That is a fact. So this is the spin that they want to put on what for law enforcement to think they're targeted by these veterans, police officers, Navy SEALs. These are the type of people that were up there at the Bundy Ranch protecting the Bundys. These are not crazed lunatics. If they were crazed lunatics, there would have been gunfire. Think about it, people. Militia extremists and lone offenders with similar anti-government ideologies have historically attacked government facilities and personnel, followed by law enforcement personnel and critical infrastructure and key resources, or CIKR, based on open source and law enforcement reporting since 2010. Law enforcement is targeted because these individuals perceive it as an extension of state control over individuals, and CIKR is targeted to undermine the government's perceived economic and societal power and control. Now, isn't that amazing? Because it was the government that was in the Bundy's backyard, not the other way around. Nobody went to a government building and did anything. I mean, even the nut jobs that killed the 2 police officers, which is horrendous, but even those nut jobs weren't on government property. They went into a fast food restaurant. So we're going to go down here. Out of 8 total incidents documented since 2010. Now, did you hear that? 8 total incidents, and that's including the Bundy standoff, in which nobody was harmed. There's no extremists there because the only extremist that went there got kicked out. We question some of the ones that they're saying, but let's give a hypothetical that they're right. 8 total since 2010. It is 2015. That's in 5 years. Well, 4 years because they're going since 2014. That's when this report is. So I was wondering, how many people began killed by law enforcement in 2014? 8 incidents total here, right? So they want the police officers to be in panic about this. But why? It's to divide us. I'll show you. Citizen-run database shows that over 1,000 people were killed by the cops in 2014. To date, the most reliable data anyone has about law enforcement killings in the United States was the FBI statistics on homicides by law enforcement. But therein lies the problem. I will put a link to where you can find that, this article. However, so you have 8 versus thousands of people dying at the hands of law enforcement, and they want law enforcement to think we're the problem. Now, I don't want people to think law enforcement's the problem either. It's the mentality. It's what they're being trained. It's what they're being taught. They are being psyoped just like the public is, and they're buying it. So because they're reading stuff like this, they think they're being targeted. They're in panic mode, and the first thing they do is what? They think they're defending themselves. When in reality, they're not targeted. We are. And we're targeted by them because of a false report. So the database shows over 1,000 people killed by the cops. And there's been some horrendous cases. Look up the Kelly Thomas case. 6 police officers beat that man almost plumb to death. And I'm not saying all police officers are like that. But I want you to understand the reality of this. They're propagandizing our police, and our police officers need to know this because they need to realize that we're not. And I really am wondering if the U.S. Marine that's sitting in Washington right now in jail without bail for no real justifiable reason. He has no criminal history whatsoever. Pete Santilli, arrested earlier this week. they claimed he was on the terrorist watch list and that his vehicle matched, and then later they backtracked on that statement. Could this report be why that statement was made? Because I'll tell you the thing that was in common with the U.S. Marine that's in Washington and Pete Santilli. They were both at the Bundy Ranch. Pete Santilli was recording live, and the other gentleman was helping to protect an innocent family. They try to say that the outlook is while the INA assesses that the rate of violent domestic extremist attacks motivated by anti-government ideology will increase over the next year, we do not expect a change in the traditional targets of these groups. We judge that attacks on government facilities and personnel will continue to be the priority, followed by law enforcement and then CIKR. Wow. One does wonder if they're getting any information from the Southern Poverty Liar Center. So this is the cute little document that they're trying to use in order to claim that, it's just so horrible. This article is based on a body of law enforcement and open source reporting from DHS, Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, FBI, and media ranging and reliability. How can they even say media ranging and reliability when they even quoted themselves that some of the sources had not even been known whether it was reliable or not? You'll notice in this bottom part over here, they keep repeating the same ones over and over again. They want to make it look like they've got a lot of information to back up what they say. There's a lot of repetitive same things on different lines to make it look like they had a heck of a lot more. Okay, so there's the document. I'm going to end up sharing that with you. I do want to share with you a couple of other things really quick. And this is one of the videos that the federal government really doesn't want you to see. This is an Alex Jones InfoWars report with David Knight, who was on scene that day.
Sheriff, this is what we the people are asking this morning. This the Park Service.
We're faced with a decision to either get the cattle or be the cattle.
But we're staying here until...
Okay, you see the people all around. Many of them are not armed. Now, I'm not saying that there were not armed militia there. There were armed militia there after the BLM did their overhandedness. That's what the militia's for. Every state constitution has a part in the militia in order to protect the people. But if you will notice, these are not violent people.
We want those arms picked up, don't we?
The crowd is now moving forward toward the barrier. The police have been telling everybody they're going to shoot if we don't move back.
As we approach the one-year anniversary of the standoff at the Bundy Ranch, I want to take another look at what happened, especially in light of the lies and slander from media like Glenn Beck and the dangerous characterization by Obama, Harry Reid, Homeland Security, that labeled the community standing together against brutality as domestic terrorists. On April 7, 2014, Paul Joseph Watson wrote an article, Armed Feds Prepare for Showdown with Nevada Cattle Rancher, with the subtitle, Ruby Ridge-Style Standoff Brewing, as Bundy says he's prepared to be killed. The property rights dispute had been going on for decades, but now things were beginning to come to a head. Hundreds of federal officials, aided by helicopters, low-flying aircraft, hired cowboys, began rounding up Bundy's cattle the preceding weekend as Bundy accused them of trespassing. Orders from the local community and protesters headed to the area to demand that the feds back off. The BLM had created a First Amendment area out in the middle of nowhere where demonstrators could voice their concerns, but nowhere else.
This area right here, this small area here, was cordoned off with orange temporary
construction barriers march for the free speech zone. It just shows you how quickly your free speech zones can disappear. When you allow them to be contained to a very small area, it's gone. But we're here, and we want to tell the BLM something about how upset we are with what's going on here, but there's no government agency here to listen to us. That's the whole reason you don't confine people to remote areas from what's happening. Not only had the federal agents been confiscating Bundy's cattle, they had also set up agents with sniper rifles, pointed at the ranchers, pointed at the protesters. The crowd had been building throughout the week, and on Saturday there was a huge crowd. To defuse it, the sheriff came in the morning to address the crowd and tell them that the powers that be had graciously consented to allow the last rancher remaining in business in the area to continue grazing. Never mind that he had had most of his cattle rustled by the army of BLM contractors for the past several weeks.
With that said, I believe a press release has already been put forth that the BLM is going to cease this operation. The Gold Butte allotment will be reopened to the public.
Much to the surprise of the sheriff, Bundy said that wasn't good enough.
Sheriff, this is what we the people are asking this morning. Disarm the Park Service.
Right.
At Lakemead and Red Rock Park and all other parks that the federal government claims they have jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
Take your county bulldozers and loaders and tear down the entrance places, where they ticket us and where they enter us and make us citizens pay their fees. You take down get the county equipment out there and tear those things down this morning.
Yes, sir.
What they wanted was for him to exercise his authority as the only lawful law enforcement in the area and to disarm the BLM agents and contractors who had been pointing their sniper rifles at the protesters and ranchers, confiscate their weapons, tell them to leave the area, and then stack the weapons on stage. Bundy gave him 1 hour to do so. At the end of the time limit, Bundy announced that it looked like the sheriff wasn't going to do anything. No one was surprised. But what did surprise us and surprised federals was his announcement.
I guess he's not coming, so I guess we had presents. We thought we had a sheriff here, but evidently we don't have a sheriff here. We're going to go and take the rest of them out of the compound trails up here above the freeway.
I was one of the first ones to get down to the area where the standoff would occur. Okay, people are now moving. They stopped for prayer. They had vehicles, they had guns that were pointing at us, and they had shields. And they had a loudspeaker that was announcing that they would shoot if we did not leave the area. The only mainstream media that was in attendance was one cameraman from Fox News. He desperately wanted to get over to the BLM and interview them, but he was scared to death, as you can see in this video, that they were going to shoot him. He kept announcing that he was with Fox News. He pulled up his shirt to show that he wasn't armed. They kept telling him to go back. They did not want him to come to interview them. They were in a fighting stance. They had 80 different cars, each of them with just one BLM agent.
Now, it's a standoff. I've got a count of 107 vehicles.
107, okay.
Going on the road. And, you know, the thing of it is all 107 those vehicles were armed with armed army.
Yes.
That always fascinated me.
Absolutely.
Why would the State Highway Patrol allow an army like that onto their highway, and then why would that army be able to pass through the city of Mesquite without, you know, any resistance, through the state of Arizona without any resistance, through the port of entry into Utah without any resistance, and that army disappeared in the state of Utah? And not one media, no question. That army went across the United States without one question asked.
An army of BLM agents, 107 cars of armed men. This is exactly what the Posse Comitatus Act prohibits. It's not just a prohibition of the military being used for law enforcement. Understand that posse comitatus is Latin for power of the community. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits the president from usurping the true posse comitatus, the true power of the community, with his own posse of armed federal agents. There were clear distinctions, too, from Ferguson and other places where we've seen protests about a government that's out of control. In Ferguson, businesses in the community were destroyed and burned. As InfoWars has pointed out, in Ferguson, these looters were coming from outside of the community. They were not the core protesters. And of course, the same thing could have happened at Bundy Ranch. I believe the reason that it didn't was because the militia threw out people who were dangerous or provocateurs. People like Jared Miller, who later shot 2 cops in Vegas. But rather than give the militia credit for expelling people like Jared Miller, the media used it to demonize them. Another difference about the Bundy Ranch was that there was a clear, achievable objective. The people were peaceful, but they were determined.
The police have been telling everybody they're going to shoot if we don't move back. People are moving forward with their hands in the air, holding flags with both hands in the air. It's a mixture of people on foot, as you can see, people on foot and cowboys.
They decided they're going to pull those pins, but it's only going to be Bundy and his son.
No,
that's it.
It's the people or not, and you guys need to leave.
Okay.
You need to leave. That's the
and I'm
term.
telling you, you need to de-escalate the situation.
No,
I'm
you need
imploring
to
upon you your responsibility to
This is
de-escalate.
Listen. You are on Nevada State Ground. And it's time for you. No,
there's a
the
time
time is now.
We're doing that.
No, the
but
time
you need
is
to push these people back and do a safe push them back so they can do a safe.
Cattle are coming in 30 minutes, but we're staying here until they're gone. Okay?
You know,
That's what we're doing.
I can back some of these guys up if you promise they won't run me and my partner down.
Whatever you tell us to do. All right. As long as it's not to compromise this mission, we will do. You have authority.
All I ask you to do is just hang tight.
Okay. So we're all right where we're at? Okay.
Yeah.
This is 1776. No, it's not.
Okay, did you hear how he said to the sheriff, "You're the one with the authority here, and if you tell us to back up, that we will"? It is very clear that this document is twisted in order to make law enforcement think they are targeted by people whom are not targeting them.
Right. What happened, what we call the Boston Massacre, is an angry mob. You call them a bunch of drunk rowdies. It's just like guys that want barroom brawls. I just love being in a fight. There's guys like that. They're belligerent. They'll fight anybody.
We were misrepresented by powerful voices.
So these people, are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
We rode over there. We didn't come charging. Guns a-blazing. We were not armed. There were a couple of cowboys that had rifles in their boots, their saddle boots. There was 1 or 2 riders that may have had a sidearm on their persons. None of them drew them from their scabbards, from the boots.
I know Glenn Beck wasn't there, but he can see from the videos taken by the people who were there that nearly all of the people at the standoff were not armed, and those that were had them holstered, even as the bureaucrats, all of whom were armed, pointed weapons and threatened to shoot. People with no guns in their hands, marching in defiance to troops threatening to shoot them. That was in the spirit of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. But let us not forget that it was Gandhi who said, among the many misdeeds of British rule in India, history will look upon the act of depriving a whole nation of arms as the blackest. Whether or not you agree with Cliven Bundy's position on his grazing rights, everyone should be appalled at the conduct of the BLM, its agents, and its hired contractors. Free speech containment areas, government snipers pointed at protesters and ranchers for weeks, violent, brutal confrontations with peaceful protesters, all manifestations of a government that is dangerously out of control. The Bundy standoff wasn't just a news event. What we saw with the showdown was that there are still Americans that won't be treated like slaves. There are still Americans that will stand with their neighbors against an army of federal bureaucrats and contractors that threaten and brutalize them. What we covered in the rural West was a government out of control and acting provocatively, as we would see again in just a couple of months in Ferguson. Unlike Ferguson, the crowd would not turn into a mob attacking its neighbors, burning their businesses. The community stood together with each other resolutely and in a determined way made it clear that they were not looking for a fight, but they weren't going to back down either. What the Bundy family and their neighbors demonstrated to the nation was that power truly lies with the community, and that when the community stands together, neighbor with neighbor, against a violent and brutal government, the thugs will back down and slink away. Unlike Glenn Beck and Obama, Thomas Jefferson would have approved of what happened at the Bundy Ranch standoff. He wrote in 1787, "What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that his people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms." For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight.
I'd like to commend David Knight. He did a very wonderful job on his follow-up on what happened at the Bundy Ranch. So this is my message. I am asking for law enforcement, local law enforcement that believe in their oath, to please understand you are being propagandized. Please stop allowing yourselves to be used as puppets and research what you are sent. Because it is clear that they are doing a psyop on you as well. They are trying to divide us, and we need to work in unity to be able to preserve our rights, but your rights as well. Because although you are our paid servants, when you take that badge off and you take your clothes off, you are also a citizen. You are one of us. You are one of we the people. You are our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our mothers, our cousins, and our nephews and nieces, our grandchildren. We need to stop allowing divide and conquer to work in this nation and fix it. And the only way we can fix it is by exposing the lies that are sent from the top in order to make law enforcement think that they have a perceived threat. Thousands have died at the hands of corrupt police. And yet, they want to claim that 8 incidents makes us a danger, or makes the militia the danger, or makes the protesters the danger. The real danger, the real reason that they fear, was not because of the militia, but because the people united and said no more. We won't allow another 76 people to be shot or burned alive because of an out-of-control ATF or BLM. We are the same people that would stand to protect your family if you were in that same situation. I ask that you please research everything that I'm telling you. Research the live streams where you can see who the real aggressors were, and stop allowing yourself to be fooled with propaganda to master the human domain in order for you to be their puppet to enforce and to solidify their agenda. Thank you for listening tonight. I hope this has all been very educational. I know it is a long video. God bless you. Research and understand you're being tricked into targeting your own people and your own rights. Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and New Year. Share this video. Get this information out. We need the law enforcement to know we're not the enemy, but the ones who are propagandizing them, well, that's your decision. With friends like that, no one needs an enemy. God bless you. Good night, and Semper Fidelis.
Maybe Mr. Lazarus knows better than I do how many bombs the president has to drop without congressional authorization before that becomes war. I don't know the actual number. But I think what Mr. King was getting at is, you know, there is one last thing to which the people can resort if the government does not respect the restraints that the Constitution places on the government. Abraham Lincoln talked about our right to alter our government, or a revolutionary right to overthrow it. And that is certainly something that no one wants to contemplate. But as I mentioned in my written and my delivered testimony, if the people come to believe that the government is no longer constrained by the laws, then they will conclude that neither are they. That is why this is a very, very dangerous sort of thing for the president to do, to wantonly ignore the laws, to try to impose obligations on people that the legislature did not approve, etc.